Hello, my name is Michael Chulak. When a business or its assets are sold, payment can be made in one of five ways. Three are common and are fairly obvious, and two are not so common. The three common ways are all cash with no financing, all cash subject to the buyer obtaining an SBA loan, or a cash down payment with the seller providing financing. The two other methods are the subject of this video. They are similar to each other, but they are not identical. They include a base fee with an earnout provision, or payments based directly on revenue as it is received. Now, all of these methods have tax ramifications, but those tax ramifications are not the subject to be addressed in this video. So let's start with an earnout. What is an earnout? An example is helpful. Assume John is a seller and Mark is a buyer negotiating the price of a business. And assume that the revenues of the business have been increasing each month for the last 12 months. Assume that the annual revenues are currently $1 million. But if the increasing trend continues, at the end of a year, the $1 million will turn into $1,200,000. The seller, John, wants the sales price to be based upon $1.2 million, arguing that it is guaranteed that the revenue will be $1.2 million at the end of 1 year. All the buyer has to do is wait, and it will be achieved. The buyer, John, wants the sales price to be based on $1 million, not $1.2 million, arguing that the sales will not increase automatically. If they increase, it will be due to his hard work, and there's no guarantee that they will increase at all. So the compromise is an earnout. An earnout provision is put into the purchase contract. The parties agree that if the revenues increase for any reason by a defined amount, again, for any reason, that the buyer will pay additional compensation to the seller. Now, the earnout can be structured as a one-time transaction, or it can be structured in steps. But the object is to create a fair agreement that takes into consideration, hopefully, the strong possibility that the revenues will increase. These earnout provisions are utilized when the revenue of a business has a recent history of revenues increasing significantly over time. An experienced business broker can assist the parties in creating a formula that is fair, but the parties should have an attorney review the language. Another method for the sale of assets is for the payments to be based over a period of time and calculated on the actual money that is received by the buyer over time. And again, an example will be helpful. So let us assume that John is a seller and he's selling a property management business. He's selling it to Mark, the buyer. And assume that there are 50 management accounts with an average management fee of $2,000 per month, or $100,000 per month in revenue. And assume there are 5 property managers, each managing 10 of those accounts. The buyer points out that if after closing the deal, he or she loses 3 accounts, the revenue is going to drop by $6,000 per month, but the salaries of those 5 people, the rent, the utilities are all going to continue. And so the buyer is also acquiring a risk. The seller's position is that the accounts shouldn't be lost as a result of a sale. But he does acknowledge, he has to acknowledge, that there are termination provisions in the management accounts. And knowing that most management accounts have a termination provision of 60 or 90 days, he has to acknowledge that there is some risk that the buyer is going to be taking. So now the parties structure a sale based upon the compensation being paid as a percentage of the management fees that are actually received each month. So these fees that are being paid to the seller are being paid over a period of time based upon cash in hand that is received by the buyer of the property management company. This structure reduces the risk to the buyer, and it justifies the buyer in paying a far higher price than he or she would have paid if the transaction was an all-cash transaction or even a transaction based upon a fixed price where the buyer is taking on the risk of financing. In one recent transaction, a buyer agreed to pay the seller of a property management account 20% of the fees actually collected from every one of those accounts for a period up to 15 years. Both the buyer and the seller were very pleased with that structure. Given that the seller was 70 years old, he created for himself a stream of income that he would collect during his retirement years that would make him very comfortable. I hope this information has been helpful. My name is Michael Chulak. I'm the owner of Pacific Business Advisors, which is a business brokerage firm established in 1987. I can be reached at area code 818-991-9019 or 818-991-5200. Thank you for listening.